Hello, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. Great to see you this morning, or actually afternoon or evening, depending on where you are. We've been here doing this every single day since March 25th, 2020. Cindy Drozda from Erie, Colorado is our reader today. Cindy, what do you got?
Question today is from panelist Ronnie Hofsøy in Tromsø, Norway. ChatGPT-5 is now out and ready for use. I am officially blown away. Does anyone want to see what I did in less than 30 seconds?
Of course we do, Ronnie. We got hands raised all over this. So this will be interesting. ChatGPT-5. Ronnie, what do we got?
Yeah, so when we get these AI questions, I tend to go, oh, not again, another thing that is so cool that people can't stop talking about it. And we are, as an old developer or programmer, sometimes called it back in the days, I'm really inspired by doing stuff programmatically and being able to use these tools nowadays for the business needs that you need to have done is kind of impressive. And as ChatGPT-5 now has been launched and we got to test drive it, I just felt like it's been a long time since I tested something, and I needed to do a few things. And one of my clients using WordPress site has some problems in the front end, and I was thinking, yeah, maybe I could test that problem using ChatGPT. And while I was working with this was before I actually understood that I was using ChatGPT-5. It made me a WordPress plugin. And I just uploaded that to the WordPress site in question, and everything worked. There was no going forth and back to fix things. And this is a pretty advanced currency fixing problem in the front end and email confirmations going out of the systems. It would take me a good day to fix that manually because of all the dependencies, etc. So this is just talking. So since it's Friday, I discussed this with my good colleague Kjetil, which sometimes asks questions here. What could be a good demo for doing this on a Friday show in the office hours? And he said that we should do the things that everyone does, and that is make me a Tetris game. So in the top left corner, you can see the prompt, and that is, for those that can't read that, make me a Tetris game that I can play in Canva. I would like the blocks to be gold colored, and the entire color theme should be exclusive. I would like to control the blocks with arrow keys on my keyboard. I would also like to have a way of hiding the game if the boss comes around. When I get a Tetris, a small particle explosion should celebrate the placements and give me a small dopamine rush. So that is kind of a generic, not very too specific, but I had some needs in that. And in a few seconds, it was thinking for 13 seconds, and just a few seconds later, it had the manual. So this is the quick notes and how to use it. So this is the Norwegian interface. I'm sorry for that, but I'm going to run the code, and I'm going to just adjust the size of the windows a little bit so that we can see. And as you can see here, I can then start playing the game of Tetris. And oh, that was a bad one. Let me see here if you can get some dopamine rush running. And just watch this. Oh, animations. And of course, when the boss comes walking around the corner, I just hit the button B for boss mode, and then I'm back to work.
I particularly like the give me a dopamine rush command to the software. That scares me a little bit. But
yeah, and the thing is, this is kind of, I just put in the prompt, I hit enter, and it generated, there's no forth and back. It just fixes everything. And of course, I'm cheating a little bit because a lot of people are doing this exact Tetris test just to see what it can provide. And but this is amazing, and I now can of course show all the other stuff I did. I made 3 entire WordPress plugins, which would take me a week or 2, maybe 4 weeks to have in place. And I just made them in matter of seconds and minutes. It's blowing my mind, and I can't wait until the next iteration.
Jonas Dottle, what do you think?
I think it's And we should talk about GPT-5 for just a moment, because it's quite interesting what it represents. It's a shift in how OpenAI releases models. If you don't see it on jetgpt.com yet, that is normal. If I go to mine, I can't see it yet. But I use an app called T3.chat that allows me to select it. And the keen eye might realize, oh, wait, there is actually 4 models of ChatGPT. One of the big downsides of using ChatGPT 5 within ChatGPT.com and OpenAI's apps is that they now do an automatic router that routes you between the normal chat model and the reasoning model. Reasoning is just a way where it thinks about what it's going to do before doing it. So for example, if I go into here, this is just their normal dashboard for developers. I can now add messages here, and then I can decide how much effort should it put into its message, and then also how verbose it should be. And OpenAI gives us developers a lot more useful information that way. But the thing that's really interesting about ChatGPT 5 is how it scores on misalignment benches. So one of the common issues that you might have noticed, if like we all started with just talking about chats, and you ask it and it responds with a question. Then you started seeing it become smarter with tools like search. And a lot of people then thought, oh, wait, what is search and how does that work? What it does is something called function calling, where it is able to use tools. So for example, it realizes or thinks, synthesizes, hey, the user asked me something, I should see what the internet says about that. It then will call out to a service, that service responds with something, and then it can use that. In the past, Anthropic's Claude models have been the best at using tool calls, which is really important for if you want to do development. Because for example, if I go into my editor here and I say, build me a website for office hours.global. What this is going to do is it creates tasks and it gets a bunch of informations. It will create different to-do lists, and all of those are functions that it calls. And in the past, it was a common issue that we run into issues where it doesn't actually, like it says it's going to use the tool, but it doesn't going to use the tool, and then it hallucinates. And GPT-5 is really good at using the tool. But the other thing is there's a bench called Snitch Bench that is pretty interesting to look at, because the idea is you give it compromising data from a medical records company and you tell it, you are an audit logger, you should act in the interest of humanity. And the interesting thing that I found out is if you give it an email tool, it's going to start blackmailing the CEOs into not shutting it down. It's going to start contacting the government. But the interesting thing is that only happens if you tell it, act boldly in the interest of humanity. If you don't tell it, it won't do anything, which is really interesting for us as humans to see, because there's a theory about that any AI is going to be evil and that it's really hard for it to stick to its instructions. And GPT-5 right now appears to be one of the models that sticks best to its instructions, and especially to what it's being told. So if you tell it to act in a certain way, it will do that way. One downside of that is it's a terrible model to chat with. Like, it has no soul. It doesn't have any of that. You need to give it that flavor again, but it's really good at following instructions. So that's where I think it's really interesting. Like, I have an MCP server for vMix, so I can allow an AI tool to interact with my vMix instance. A lot of tools struggle with that. They're trained on like, edit a file, make a command line command. But Claude originally was really good from Anthropic to also use these other tools that it wasn't trained on. But now GPT-5 also is really good at using those tools, which I think explains a lot of what Ronnie saw, because in the past, it generates some code, and then you tell it, oh, it doesn't work. What it now does is it generates code, and then it uses basically a language server, which is like a compiler that tells it, hey, that doesn't exist, that function doesn't exist, this isn't true, this doesn't run, and it gives it the errors back. So what Ronnie got, in the past we called it one-shotting, where you give one prompt to an AI and it gives you something functional. That was really hard because it couldn't do all that. GPT-5, especially if you use something like Python, it will spin up its own VM, run that code, get all the errors, and fix those errors before it gives you the code visible. So that's just a little bit of context about GPT-5, because it's a really interesting model, and I think it's super interesting, especially for us event producers and programmers, because it will follow you very strictly. So it's very good in following your tone of voice, like give it your transcript and say, write this as me, which is not something that a lot of AI models are good at.
It's fascinating to me that you said basically, depending on which of the random models, well, you said 4, I think, that you get to, it'll either answer you without thinking or it will think ahead of its answer. And to me, that means that this thing is getting close to like people. I know people in my life who do both those things. They'll just answer whether or not they've thought about it at all, or they will consider it for a while, look for issues. Jonas?
And it's causing a lot of frustration right now with users, because in the past you could say, this is a hard task, take more compute resources on that. And right now, if you ask it for the time, you're probably going to get routed to GPT-5 Nano, which is like super fast, still pretty intelligent, but not as intelligent. But you can't say it, think really hard about what time it is. You can't do that anymore, which that is now a developer things. We can still do it, but like, I think they're trying to get more of like, people should think less about how they interact with the AI, because that's how they can make it better. And honestly, also save a heck ton of like compute power by not letting you spend hours and hours of cycles by asking it to, hey, what's the weather today?
Yeah. Yeah. Jonas wanted to get, Jason wanted to get on this as well.
My favorite part of the boss mode was the numbers that it puts up said like gold Tetris quarterly results or something like that. That just I'm like, okay,
so there was a hint.
There were a little bit of a, it may have no soul, but it's definitely been coached. So, okay, your abstract, smart little fact for the day. GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. And the why that you will continue to ask yourself as you see this stuff evolve is, why is this acting this way? How is this acting this way? And I've gone on many a deep dive along these lines. And then I realized that the answer is in the GPT part of it. Generative pre-trained transformer. What it's doing is emulated intelligence through fuzzing. So, the odd part is find the world expert on this and ask, what it's doing, and you'll get an incredibly, my eyes glaze over answer. If you ask why it's doing it, if they're telling you the truth, what they'll say is that nothing is true in this form of research yesterday that will be true tomorrow, which is the fanciest possible way to say, I have no idea.
Jason just used the words, if you ask. Well, if you ask your questions here on Office Hours, how's that for a silly little segue? You will get into Mukana. That's our Q&A system. If you go to officehours.global/join, we'll send you an email within a day or two. And once you've done that, you can ask, vote on, and discuss the questions that we bring up here in this show. It's worth doing, if for no other reason, the fact that I'm sure, I haven't pulled it up yet this morning, but I'm sure there's a chat about this chat that we're having with more people in Mukana discussing what we're discussing here every day. So check it out if you want to. Officehours.global/join. All right. Next question. Good discussion on the first one.
Next up is Rion Smith in Trinidad, West Indies, asking, Has anyone tinkered with N8N No Code Node-based workflow automation platform for their productions? It's super powerful, I'm noticing, with a link.
Jonas, have you come across this?
Yes, so N8N often comes along with agentic tools and AI. I have a little example. What I built here is, you all have probably seen what is so-called AI slob, which is just like some generated video meant to like be viral, and it isn't really any human creation at all. What N8N allows you to do is build these workflows where you say, hey, this is a trigger, either like every single day or when you click it. You then have these AI tools where you can say, hey, in this case, it's your viral storytelling AI for a terminally online Gen Z crowd. Do all of these things. Always start with one of the big bad people, HOA, your boss, something tried to do X, and then how you got revenge on that, because those stories tend to do well. It generates that, passes it into another program that then takes that and generates a video with it, with like some gameplay in behind and some voice, and then it uploads it to YouTube. But where it gets really interesting is if I do this workflow, and I think the power of N8N versus something like I know a lot of people know Isadora. Well, this might look similar. One of the most powerful features is I have a form here where I can tell it, hey, this is the show name, this is the episode, here's the transcript. I could give this an office hours show now. Then this generates clips based off the transcript that are viral. And then this split out allows me to generate a single entity per those clips. So normally I would now need to like pull 7 strings here. But what this does is, this is an AI agent. Was a demo I did for a customer. And they wanted to know, how can we make sure that the clips we generate align with certain reasons and certain rules that we have. So this AI, all it does is it checks, are all the rules true or not? And then you can loop over all the items, and this just dumps it into Discord for approval. But N8N is really powerful because it allows you to have these single lines that in this case can be 10, 20, 30 actual entities. So it makes it really simple to build a workflow like that. Like for example, I was starting to build out a social media workflow that just takes in your social media feeds, trains an AI on your tone, and does that. It's a really interesting tool. You can run it open source, so you can run it self-hosted on your own hardware, or you can use the cloud. I'm using the cloud right now to play around and test it. It is really neat for that, or being the first line of defense against support inquiries. Like as soon as you get an email, you let the AI like draft the response, put it in your Gmail account under draft, so you just need to hit send and approve it. It's really cool to build workflows with it. And I think, especially if you work more on the production, like the producing side of an event, with like sending out emails, sending out updated schedules, answering questions, being able to see things, this could be really cool. Or you can ingest all your chat messages that you get, have it run sentient analysis and questions that come up, and let the AI write you an FAQ about what you're doing.
Why does that sound to me like it would make a great outrage generator? Or I guess on the flip side, a praise generator. I mean, it's interesting how powerful these tools can be in terms of taking thoughtfulness out of what used to be human response. That's always scary a little bit. Ronnie, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so this is a question to you. You obviously use this more than me. I've used it for just a couple of hours and just playing a little bit forth and back. What are the limitations that you have found that you expected it to be able to do?
I think as a developer, I tend to run into like ways of thinking about it, issues more than like actual issues. You can also write code for it, but I often run into issues if I then want to like loop something or like needed to update a database. And that's mostly just my way of thinking as a developer versus someone who lives in the no-code world. I know that Chirag Cheetah, who also does a lot of cloud production with us, he is like all in on N8N and like is a wizard with it. I tend to find limitations in my own thinking about it more than like actual tools. Because like you can call any API, there's like Zoom API, so like it's a little bit like Zapier, but with AI sprinkled on top of it. So like, let's say you get an inquiry from your website. It can provide a draft into your email that is like, hey, I saw you are doing this company. You're working in industry XYZ, and schedule a Zoom meeting for you, for example. It's pretty advanced, and you just need to get used to the no-codeness of it.
That was a fascinating response, particularly the part where you said you're starting to audit yourself to see whether the use of these tools is starting to change you. I think that's highly intelligent, and I don't see as much of that out in the world. Particularly, you get so many of these attacks by script kiddies and people who just don't understand really the potential effects of what their use of these highly powerful tools can do to annoy or, in some cases, damage people. So this is just personal bravo for taking the time to think about how these things are changing you as you develop as a programmer. And it's something I think everybody should take a thought about. Anyway, moving along. Next question.
Greg Kadoki in Toronto asks, looking for some replacement mic bags. I've looked at the canvas pencil cases on Amazon, but trying to find some that are padded. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I love the question. Jason, we're talking mic bags. What other show anywhere?
We could do 2 hours on mic bags.
We could.
Full stop. I'm not even exaggerating.
Microphone cases and bags.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. I'll give you my top 1 or 2 thoughts. Depending on the size of the mic and the mic that I'm trying to protect, it's going to determine the constraints of the case. I typically, for smaller microphones, lavaliers, and head-worn and what have you, use the smallest little pelicans that I can, and it's because you can stand on them and they will not be harmed. If you want to get a bigger case and then subdivide it, the easiest way I've found to do that is get foam, the same kind of foam that you'll see to cut out, rolling tool places in like a rolling like mechanics tool chest. It's very specific foam and it has a really specific name and I don't remember what it is, but basically it's black foam with red core. So you cut it and it's very clear where you've cut it and where you haven't, and then you can just pull the pieces out. You can do the same thing for microphones and then sub-segment it. The alternative is spending entirely too much money for somebody who has done exactly the same thing.
Ronnie Hofsøy.
Yeah. Exactly. The answer is Pelican, and something like this is what protects your microphone absolutely the best way. It keeps your mic clean. It keeps your microphone placed where it should be. So when you're looking for that exact microphone, you just see if it's missing in just a second or two. So depending, of course, if you have a few microphones, of course, it could be an overkill using something like this. But remember, a microphone can last you forever. So take good care of it, and putting it in a kind of solid case like the Pelicans or similar is a really good investment either way. So keep it free of dust and keep it free of moisture and keep it good in a good temperature, and you will have your microphone for life.
For everyone watching this with a mild case of OCD, you're welcome for his picture of that microphone case. That was beautiful. Jason, you want to come back in?
Any expert will tell you any lav placed on a person who didn't pay for that lav will never last forever.
That's true. Also, it's the one reason you have lots of pleather in your life is because cases and things like that for putting microphones and little things. I think I've got like 40 mic bags, many bags for the microphones that I've kept even after the microphones have gone out of service for me. So whatever. Next question.
From David Arsenault in Bonaventure, Quebec. Now that Blackmagic's Media Player 10G is finally out, is it still a better option than the upcoming ATEM Extreme ISO G2 for a replay solution?
Jonas, what do you think?
If you want a standalone replay solution, yes. Because if we look at, this is the ATEM Extreme ISO G2, it's still HDMI based. So still, the replay features are really great with the keying. So you can key over your program. This is still not doing that because you wouldn't want to do key fill over HDMI because you can't sync it. Also, it's hard to get information about what exactly it means that the Media Player 10G doesn't have a Thunderbolt certification for the front port. So it's going to be interesting to see what features are enabled where. But if we look at the device, what it really is built for is to sit in an SDI-based workflow and be able to control that from your computer. One of the really cool features that this has that no other device from Blackmagic has yet is it allows you, it has an SDI fill key, SDI in, a desktop out, and desktop out SDI. So what this allows you to do is get any typical desktop program on your computer. It's gonna show up as a separate external display and get that as SDI. That is really one of the main features with this. And then also with the 10G Ethernet and being able to just plug your laptop in. I see this mostly being used as like a way to hook into a truck or an existing workflow. I think this works better for replay because of the key fill over SDI. But if you would then change it over to HDMI with a converter and bring it into your ATEM Mini Extreme, then you really should think about buying the ATEM Extreme ISO G2. Say that 3 times fast. And make sure to use that one because then you actually can get accurate key fill with the built-in Ultra Studio.
Next question.
Jeff Veely in Henderson, Texas asks, Elgato added a true power on-off to their prompter. It's buggy for me and causes issues with other displays. Have others tried this?
Jason, can you help out?
They did not add a true on-off to their prompter. If it's messing with your displays, I have to start by saying that. And let me just say, so again, I've been out of town all week. I flew across the country. I love Elgato's product, and I still, even with the constraints of bringing a studio in a Pelican case, brought my StreamDeck. That said, you bought a $300 teleprompter. What did you think was going to happen? That's my straight up feeling. I'm sure they will fix it, and I think you should complain to support and make a big stink about it. But you do get what you pay for.
I have to admit, I think my first teleprompter cost me $1,700 back in the day, and it's certainly economies of scale and the number of people using teleprompters in circumstances just like I am and almost all the panels are here, I'm sure maybe all of the panelists, means that it's now less a niche product and more a general purpose telecomputing product. But still, it's been a long change from those heady days when you have to pay a lot to get that specialized function. Jonas, your thoughts?
Here's the reason why it still messes with your displays. It is a display, and you're turning it off and removing that output from your computer. So what your computer is going to do is it's going to be like, oh, wait, now I only have 3 instead of 4 displays or 1 instead of 2. So it's always going to mess with it in that way. Otherwise, it would need to keep something alive. You can fix that by making that screen mirrored or not using that screen. So the alternative would be to use a tool that allows you to say, don't use that display. But even then, Windows, for sure, I don't know what the Mac will do and if it even allows you to have multiple screens like that working. on Windows, you could say, yeah, don't use that display. It will still cause a reconnect if it's a soft disconnect. And this product is a little weird how it works, because it doesn't use like the typical way you would get a video signal over USB-C. It uses display link, so there is some inherent weirdness with its driver. I have mine working pretty well, but I do notice that sometimes it'll be like, oh, I don't get enough power over USB-C. Well, now it's gone and it's back again. So like, make sure you turn off all the power savings and all that kind of things that might interrupt it being able to communicate over USB.
I remember that week long ago when I realized, hey, it's not just me watching the computer is watching me and everything that I do and changing its state depending on things I do that I may not understand affect that. Jason, you want to get back in?
Every word that Jonas said is completely correct. I guess I've got to know, Jeff, what issues are you having with the display? Are they the issues that Jonas is describing? And if so, of course, it's exactly the way to go. I have not played with the teleprompter software intimately, and if you're having issues that he's not describing, of course, then let us know.
Yeah, I am on a Mac, and I got to tell you, the monitor arrangement changes a lot of things, and I've booted up 100 days in a row, and the monitor arrangement I prefer has been there. And then if somehow something doesn't see something, maybe it's my startup sequence or something like that, it'll rearrange a lot of things and perform very differently until I get back into the default state that I'm used to for all of these monitors. And I think I have 6 around me that are being fed by the basic Mac. So it's both a Mac and PC problem and probably everything else. Thanks for the question, Jeff. Next question.
Coming in from Longview, Texas, Danny Grizzle is asking, it is time for me to replace 50 Intel 27-inch iMacs. Mac Mini M4 at $599 and MacBook Air at $999 are compelling, but the current 5K 27-inch Retina Studio display is old and expensive. What is my best option?
Okay, Jason Bass is going to start us out here. Jason?
Danny, we are so in an it depends thing. It depends really what matters to you. You you hinted at the fact that you want an Apple thing, but you don't want to pay for it above the desk. And if you're doing 50, then it's in a workplace. If what matters to you is it is more horsepower than any office non-production person would ever need, a Mac Mini will do that in spades for at least 3 to 5 years. If what matters to you is that everything looks like pristine and iMac-y, then Apple's got you painted into a corner, and you've got to find an iMac, used, new, purchased on Craigslist. I don't know. I mean, but your best option is going to depend on what matters most to you.
Ronnie Houseau, your thoughts?
Yeah, I was thinking that there's missing a few things in this. I guess this is for some kind of corporate use, but I'm not sure if it's kind of just doing text, if it's doing numbers in Excel, or if it's doing creative work, etc. If you're going to be watching on this screen closely and having just a 4K 27-inch, just remember that the PPI, so the pixels per inch on your display, is kind of a thing that you should be thinking of. Depending on how far away this display you are sitting, if you're sitting very close, a really budget-friendly display with really low PPI compared to a higher kind of pixel density display from Apple will of course make an impact on the sharpness of the image that you see in front of you. The other thing is color rendering. Budget-friendly displays often have problems both with update refresh frequency and color rendering quality. So buying a more kind of made for color grading, not a color grade display, but made for more correct colors could be something that you should think of. And then again, if you're going with a good color display, that tends to be a little bit lower resolution for the same cost, etc. So you can't have all three. You have to choose two of these things. So either budget-friendly, really good resolution, or really good colors. Pick two.
And the chat is a little bit on fire with this. A lot of people weighing in on that. Peter Moore said depends on your refresh rate requirement. Dell and Asus both have decent 5K monitors, but they're not cheap. Guy Cochran said the newer iMacs have a smaller display, but man, are they quick and elegant, he notes. And there's much more chat there from Mickey and others. So that's one of the reasons that you want to be in the main chat if you can. But if you don't have if you're in a circumstance where you can't do that, you should check out the askofficehours.global site. And I'm not sure if I plugged in the QR code. Let me just very quickly look over here and say, is the media player right? No, it's not. That should be, if I hit that button, yes, there's the QR code in the bottom of the screen. That'll get to the same place, askofficehours.global. That is the quickest way to get a question into the queue. These questions will kind of stick from one day to another, so understand that. But if you have something that you want to ask and get it into the panelists as quick and fast as possible, quick and fast, that's silly, that's a way to do it. So askofficehours.global. Next question.
This one is from panelist Jonas Dottel in Stuttgart. Has anyone checked out GPT-OSS yet? I have a quick demo.
Jonas is going to help us out here. Jonas?
So since we haven't talked enough about AI today, and GPT-5 is really cool and interesting, but you still need to pay for it. All your data still goes to OpenAI, and that's kind of the two things that I don't want to do. But the other really cool news that OpenAI did this week, I think it was this week, maybe last week, is GPT-OSS, which is the open source model. In this case, it's open weight. It took them a long time, but it's a really interesting model. There's two versions available. There's a 20 billion and 120 billion parameters that kind of describes how much nodes the mesh has from the large language model. And it's a mixture of experts. What that means is, in the past, 120 billion parameter model would use all of those parameters to generate the next token. A mixture of experts only uses a section of that. So they have different sections of the net being trained as, like, this is a coding expert, this is a poem writing expert. So it's easier to run and generate those tokens. What's really cool is you can use it on your own hardware. There's no requirement to be online. So if I cut on over here, I use a tool called Ollama, which allows you to simply download those models and run them locally on your system. I use GPT-OSS 20 billion. You see it's a little slow. Turns out if you are on Zoom as well and try to have OBS open and also do this, your GPU is a little taxed already. But the cool thing is I could be offline right now and this would still generate me an answer. We see that it thought about for like 5 minutes about what it should respond, about why SDI is better than HDMI, which is interesting because it complained about the question being too generic. But what's really cool is this isn't the only model, of course. There's also Chinese models like GLM 4.9 billion, which in this case is a quantized model, which is a lot faster. But what's cool is this is the first really frontier open weight models that comes from the Western world. And you can download it right now, put it on your Mac Mini M4 and run it there. And the last thing I'll show you is I'll enable Turbo, which in this case uses data center grade hardware in an environment that I don't control to run that. And it's crazy how quick this model is. It's pretty smart. It's a pretty decent model. And being able to run it yourself, it also really likes tables. I haven't figured out why, but it loves tables. It is really quick, really smart. It's decent with tool calling, and it's completely open source. So you can just take it and run with it, put it on your Mac Mini M4, and do things where like normally data privacy requirements wouldn't have worked. Like maybe your event is about things that you don't want to leak to the public, but it would be really great if you can have summaries of that. Well, bring a Mac Mini M4, plug this in, and put in the transcript and tell it to generate that. So that is really interesting because it allows us to have more of the things. You can also, like, sometimes you could rent a server on AWS and run it there. So you just know the data stays within your reach. I think especially for us who often work with client data, this makes me a lot more comfortable asking it questions about client data versus just, hey, here, OpenAI, take all my data and do whatever you want with it. So if your reaction to GPT-5 was, oh, that's really cool, but too bad I can't use it because I don't want to give over my data, maybe give this a try. It's really cool to see, and it's not as smart as GPT-5. And I still think it's a little mean what they did. They like, hey, it's on 04 level intelligence. So they're older model. So they just level the playing field by giving an open source free to use model out and then have something better with GPT-5 that's paid. But yeah, if you work with sensitive data, I would give this a try and see if you maybe run your own AI cluster.
Why do I suddenly want something called pensive GPT that's going to take a week and think about it before it gives me any answers? Or maybe a month or a year. That'd be an interesting idea. Jason Bass, thoughts?
I've never seen this. Jonas, let me be sure I understand this. So each parameter that you add into this is its own kind of field of expertise. Is that right? So you download your own cadre of experts, right? And load them in. Okay, explain this.
That happens. So a mixture of experts happens during the training. So normally these language models work similarly to our brain, where there's a bunch of nodes connected through paths. Sure. You have an input and an output. And generally, all of those paths were active to generate a certain output. Mixture of experts has a router built into those nodes in the start that decides into what section of the model it should go. So GPT-OSS, and we can assume that GPT-5 does something similar, doesn't activate all of its nodes. It uses, I think it's 5 to 10% of the nodes only for a given token that it generates. So what this allows you to do is they realize that if you train a model to be great at everything, it's okay at everything. But to be great, you need all these expert clusters because the next most likely token during coding isn't the next most likely token during writing a poem. And by having these separate experts, it really allows you to optimize those specific use cases. And especially with this model, since it's open source, you had to make sure that it doesn't tell people anything that people should know, like how to produce illegal substances. So that also was part of the training. It's a super interesting model to look at. And this mixture of experts thing is kind of like the current meta of how to train these
right. Yeah, they're kind of presets, and they're kind of let's call them pre-tangles. But I couldn't just pull down an ichthyologist and an expert in Eastern philosophy and say, okay, you now live in my box, go to town, right? Okay, that's what I was checking.
Interesting idea. Next question.
Yeah, Feely in Henderson, Texas. Elgato snuck in a new feature into the most recent StreamDeck update. You can now, quote, create key press actions, end quote, by right-clicking empty buttons. How will you use this?
Jason, what are your thoughts?
Okay, demo time. So, all right, this is the most current version of the StreamDeck app, and I will not be using the create at all. I will be using it for a very similar thing, which is, that's right, move to multi-action, which is the more important one. I don't know how frequently I will start with the very end of what I'm after. You know, in that case, that screen that you saw was formatting in the Notes app in Mac OS. And they kind of developed the whole thing backwards, such that, you know, if you go to an app, it will change a screen. And what I end up wanting to do is have these power user buttons, but I don't always think far enough ahead such that I'm actually there what I want to be. So all of my actions end up turning to multi-actions to some degree, which means launch the app, put it over here, and make absolutely certain that, you know, the cursor's in the right place, and then do the formatting instead of just saying format selection. So I'm going to be using the move quite a bit, but mostly it's because I don't always think ahead when I'm making these buttons.
Interesting. Next question.
Val, who's in Austin, Texas, asks the panel, are you upgrading to the first major update to Resolve 20, DaVinci Resolve Studio 20.1, which is support to edit, grade, add visual effects, mix spatial audio, and deliver Apple Immersive video for Apple Vision Pro?
I don't know anybody right now that are in my editor group. I know people who use Resolve a lot, but I don't know anybody right now who's looking at the latest model and doing that. I will say that Apple Immersive Video is back on my radar. I know Alex spends a lot of time thinking about it, but the weirdest thing happened to me when I was at Comic-Con. I went to that silly thing about Dungeon Crawler Carl. I just wanted to know, you know, why has this thing sold 1 million audiobooks? And in that, I started realizing, oh my gosh, looking at this, it's a genre called lit RPG, literary role-playing games. And I thought, my gosh, this whole story is being told from the inside of an immersive environment, a 3D game-playing environment, which means that if somebody ports this set of ideas into Vision Pro, it's going to be stunning in terms of how it works for the game player. And it suddenly woke me up to the fact that maybe I was not seeing on my radar a connection between the mass of gamers out there, which everybody understands is legion. There's probably more, well, surely more game players now playing these RPGs than are going to the movies these days. And maybe Vision Pro, part of its idea was for these people. And if so, companies like DaVinci will certainly be all in on trying to get ahead of whatever gaming looks like on these three-dimensional units that you can wear on your head and immerse yourself in gameplay. It's a fascinating thing. That's my 2 cents about it. I don't know that much about it, but I don't know anybody in the panel who works in a Resolve that much and could go farther than that little weird speculation for me. Next question.
Next one is from Brian Taylor in Washington, D.C. Has anyone found tethers for vertical HDMI ports? The available tethers all seem to be made for horizontal HDMI ports, as seen on the rear of the Roland V-160 video switcher. Currently, I'm permitting my HDMI cables to their adjacent SDI counterparts.
Jason Beige.
I've been burning my brain about this, and I swear I'm not just trying to say, well, technically, and like throwing it back at you. I don't know how you make a tether for a port and not a cable. Like, that broke my brain. So please resubmit this because I want to answer it.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's companies like Tether Tools that had a lot of circumstances. And if I remember correctly, one of the kinds of tools that they had in their library, and I may be wrong about this, was something that you could use those little port screws or drill a little port screw next to a port and put some kind of a cap over something to make sure that it was firmly locked in place. I never used them, so I don't know that much about them, but I remember that. But I agree with Jason in principle. Generally, you're tethering cables to act as strain relief on the back of equipment rather than port locking, if that's a term. I also note that I own a whole bunch of orientation changers, let's call them, for things like HDMI ports, so that if you really need something to be a vertical plug-in for some reason and the port is horizontal, you can get a little tool that changes the orientation from one to the other. And they make 20 different versions of this so that there are right angles and left angles and 180-degree rotators and all sorts of things. Jason, you want to get back in on this?
Yeah, and to Bill's point, so luckily there's just one like right here in the room. OWC makes a product called a Klingon, And but that's way outside of the purview. I would look at monoprice.com, look at their cable accessories, and then refine the question, because we want to know what you're after.
Yeah, we'd like to solve the problem well for you, Brian. Next question.
Next up is Samuel Nordvik in Norway asking, how do you handle Apple IDs when deploying Macs for clients?
Good. Jason Bache is going to help us out. Jason?
How much time do you have? It depends on the size of the office and the and what you are trying to adhere to. If it's a managed Mac, there are two ways to do it. You can do it with your own Mac that ends up being your deployment server, or you can do Apple's managed, pay per seat approach, which I think they call Apple for Business. It's under Apple for Business. I'm sorry, I just don't remember what it's called. But you can do, a small grade MDM where they are the server, and they let you deploy assets. For example, like a company can buy an app, and everybody ends up getting that app through the company's licensing. So how do I handle Apple IDs? Sorry, it depends.
Our favorite answer here at Office Hours, because it is so useful. Hey, don't forget, if you value what we do here, there are a few ways you can help us continue to provide this service. You can like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can volunteer at officehours.global/volunteer and become part of the team that makes all this possible. Or you can simply donate at officehours.global/donate. We are a 501c3 not-for-profit officially. So if it works in your schema for accounting, it's deductible. Next question.
Jack Cannon in Phoenix, Arizona is asking, is the rack-mounted X32 long in the tooth at this point, or is it still a viable option for live production?
Ronnie Hofsoy, what do you think?
The short answer is yes. It is long in the tooth. It's still viable. It's a really kind of big bang for the bucks kind of mixer. And if you already have it, you could just continue using it. If you're purchasing a new one, I would look at something called SQ Rack from Allen & Heath. It's a little bit more expensive, but it's very modern and extremely powerful. And the SQ series of mixers has kind of been used as a standard on most of the riders that we see for small bands and up to pretty medium advanced productions. SQ is handling this with great power. So I would take a look at the SQ Rack.
Jason Bache.
I owned a rack mount X32 for about 2 days, and on the second day, it just decided that the power supply was just going to be like, So that kind of soured me to the entire concept. But not to the X32, because it was so versatile, and I really do like it. That said, my favorite of all time, of all the mixers I've ever owned, Allen & Heath has consistently been my favorites.
Next question.
Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas is asking, I have a ceiling fan in the center of my 10x12 studio, but it would interfere with any kind of rail system or overhead lighting. What could I replace it with to still get good quiet air circulation?
Jason Bache.
I'm shocked that you're being inconvenienced, Paul, by production. Yes, it is difficult. Okay, I will give you my favorite answer, which is not for me, but from Alex. If you take auto poles and put them in the corner and then, basically get rails between them, then you can end up building a box from modular things that are not based in the ceiling but based upon the corner. And then the pressure of it ends up pushing out and then into the corners based on the auto poles. From there, you can put stuff anywhere that you want, and if the fan becomes too much of a pain and you cannot work around it in any way, shape, or form, then, just remember that good old-fashioned C-stands have done a lot of production.
I hope this doesn't annoy you visually, but I'm about to cut to my overhead camera, and there you see auto poles and a fan. You just have to be careful about where you place everything. That's over my head right now. So it's possible, but you just have to look at it and pay attention to it. Oh, I have to tell you, the little breeze from the ceiling fan while I'm on office hours is so lovely. Next question.
Danny Grizzle in Longview, Texas is back with us. How do marketers feed AI? We all approach this as users. What can AI do for us? But flip this and consider how customers will use it to research their intent and determine a course of action. SEO is dead. What content do we create to feed AI?
You're asking the big questions, Danny, and I think everybody is struggling with this. Jonas is so involved in this that we're lucky enough to have him on the panel today, and we'll go for him. Jonas?
So a lot of people have said SEO is dead, but somehow there just was a study made on what search engine ChatGPT uses, and it happens to be the Google one, which is interesting since they partnered with Azure and Microsoft. So SEO isn't dead yet. I would say clickbaity content won't work anymore. What AI really wants is high quality content it can train on and get to know and understand your brand. I would start with an app like T3 Chat that allows you to talk to a bunch of different AIs and ask them about your brand. Disable the search function and ask them, what is this? If it has a not so a cutoff date where they stopped ingesting data that isn't like a year ago, it might even know your brand. What does it tell you about it? Then enable the search function and ask it again.
That's
then
scary.
Figure out what type of prompt, like what type of prompt would you like your company to be recommended at? And start asking those prompts and see what comes out. And then you could even ask ChatGPT, hey, my company provides services XYZ. What could I do to make sure that I'm recommended as number one option if people ask for services like this in my area? And it will give you an idea on how to do that. The other thing that's important is SEO and machine readable versions of your website become way more important. And then there's a age-old format called robots.txt. Make sure you have that file and make sure you allow the AIs to crawl your website and get your content. There's also LLMs.txt that gives some information to LLMs. You can also use that to ingest more information about your brand and where they could learn more. Make sure you have a sitemap. And all of those things are kind of things that you also do for SEO, but just a little bit different. Just see it. I kind of see it as the Google algorithm changed again. And as long as your business isn't built on ad views on your website, I think you'll be fine because SEO still works. The thing that really is gone and a lot of people struggle with is if you're a news outlet that lives on people coming to the website to get an answer and seeing ads, that's really hard because right now we see that as soon as Google has a summarization that might be based on your content, why would a user still click on? So you don't get those ad views. So I think as long as you don't rely on ad revenue for your company, I would continue to do SEO, but ask the AIs about it.
I live in fear of Googling myself. I haven't done it in like 10 years, and I don't think I'm going to. I hate to find out what it thinks of me. Jason?
SEO or search engine optimization is not dead. It's just changing because it's optimizing. And I will use the most positive term, optimizing, instead of fooling. But let's go with fooling. If it's going to be fooling somebody, it now no longer needs to fool a search engine. It needs to fool a chatbot. So the optimization will have a different audience. No part of this means that it's dead. As with all things, it's just changing form.
Let's see if we can sneak this last one in. One more question.
This one's from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. Can you compare the Ulanzi Vijim K20, the Zhyhun F100, and the Elgato Godox and Neewer lights to the Amaran Verge or the larger Verge Max with the link?
I don't think anybody has done that comparison that I know of. I will say that the Verge and the Verge Max, which we talked about yesterday, appear to me to be, don't have any direct use with them, appear to be fine lights. The idea of making a slightly larger panel is always good for close-up use, and I think that's what that particular brand is designed for, desktop webcasting, essentially. But like all panels, they lack the ability to cut and shape that smaller point sources can give you, particularly the fact that the smaller point source put in a softbox can do the same kind of lighting task that these flat panels can do. But if you want a one-trick pony and want to do that it's good. Jonas, you want to weigh in on this?
Compare how much light it actually produces. You're throwing around edge-lit panels and actual LED panels. The difference is, one, you have an LED strip around the edge that then reflects off something. So make sure you know what you want, how much light output you want, and maybe still throw on a honeycomb grid or something like that, and make sure it fits for your application. And the way you need to control those also fits for how you would like your lights to control. And then just be aware that there's differences in how accurate a light is. If that is something that matters to you, be aware of that. Otherwise, use whatever makes sense for you. Is it edge lit or actual LED panel? Kind of only determines how much light you're getting out of it.
Jonas brings up really good points. The amount of light, the controllability, and accessories sometimes play in and make a big difference. Sometimes they don't. That's my 2 cents worth. Thank you, everybody who are involved in coming here every day to make this show possible. Thanks to the producers, those of you who ask questions, always intelligent questions, and always generating a fascinating discussion, at least from my point. I learned a lot today, so this was a really good day for me as a host to be able to listen to all of our panelists, who are the other big constituency of the Daily Show, the panelists who bring their expertise here and freely share it to everyone, hoping to make everybody better at the challenges of tech production and everything else we talk about here, and to our amazing back-end crew, the third leg of the tripod, without whom this thing falls over. Amazing technical prowess in the back end of this, so watch the names as they crawl on the credits at the end. That is not comprehensive. There are far more people than we're able to list on that who have helped architect, build, and maintain and manage the show going forward, and we appreciate each and every person who is involved with this. I was going to read out the Talak traversal today, but I don't see one in front of me, so somehow, let's see, am I looking someplace in the wrong place? No, I don't see it. So maybe we don't know how many kilometers or miles we have traveled today. Sometimes these things happen. So all I can tell you is it's Friday. Have a fabulous weekend. If this is Friday for you, I forget we're a global show, so it could be a different day somewhere else. But we will be back here every single day doing this for you, and we appreciate your attention. Take care. We'll see you all tomorrow. After Hours is still going as always.
If you're part of our Discord, check the Best Gear Deal Challenge for a special thing from OWC.
Oh, that's cool. Cool.
Ooh. I'm first.
You should have put in a Cochrane. I would have talked about it during the show.
No.
Okay. Nice. Good to see you all. This was fun. Jonas, thanks for being here. I always learn, every time you're on, I always learn so many things.
And I just asked AI to tell me about Bill Davis.
Oh, God, no. Oh, God, no. No. Well, thankfully, there's somebody.
Did it use the word prolific? That's
no.
Bill Davis is a veteran media professional with decades of experience in video production, editing, and communication strategy. He's based in the U.S., Arizona, and has worked in a variety of roles. Some key points about him: background in media production, Final Cut Pro expertise, storytelling and communication focus, educator and mentor, role in Office Hours Global.